In 2017, Naoya Inoue stepped into a moment that would come to define not merely the trajectory of his rising career, but the perception of what a young champion could become when ambition, talent, and flawless timing converged with a force that seemed almost preordained, as though the universe itself had bent slightly to clear the path ahead of him. Even then, still early in the stretch of his professional journey, he carried an aura that suggested something larger than youth, larger than natural talent, something forged in the quiet intensity he wore like armor each time he walked through the tunnel and into arenas pulsing with expectation. It was a calm, almost unnatural presence, a sense of inevitability that left observers unsettled in their admiration. By 14 fights, he had already carved out an identity that blurred the line between prodigy and phenomenon, claiming titles across multiple divisions with a precision so clinical that audiences were left asking whether they were witnessing a once-in-a-generation force or the emergence of a new standard capable of reshaping the sport entirely. His reputation preceded him, carried through whispers, highlight reels, and reports of a relentless, unerring fighter whose skill seemed too fully formed for one so young. And yet, despite the accumulation of belts and accolades, there lingered a question that followed him like a shadow refusing to dissipate. Could his dominance translate beyond the borders of Japan, beyond the familiar lights of Tokyo arenas where fans roared his name with devotion, into the vast and unforgiving stage of American boxing, where respect was rarely given and always hard-won? For many in the United States, Inoue's reputation existed as a distant echo, a name carried overseas on the testimonies of analysts who spoke of his speed, his power, and his eerie composure with the enthusiasm of people attempting to describe something that few had actually seen in person. They admired the highlights but questioned the context, wondering whether his opponents were genuinely elite or whether his brilliance simply reflected the comfort of a home environment in which travel, culture, and pressure favored him. The assumption was that a fighter could shine at home yet falter under unfamiliar scrutiny, and that assumption lingered around Inoue like static in the air. Among those voices was Antonio Nieves, a confident, rugged competitor who embraced the opportunity to challenge Inoue not merely as a career opportunity but as a chance to puncture the aura surrounding the young champion. Nieves believed he could expose the untested depths of Inoue's resolve, insisting that the soft hum of Japanese arenas could never replicate the harsh glare of American expectations, and that a fighter unaccustomed to such intensity would inevitably crack beneath it. He positioned himself as a challenger of not just fists, but of narrative, a man determined to puncture the myth. In the weeks leading to their bout, Nieves spoke with conviction, framing himself as the man prepared to shatter the illusion. His certainty provided an anchor for fans who shared his skepticism, a tangible narrative against which the crowd could orient itself, and fists but a story in which an American could stand against a foreign prodigy. They mistook Inoue's quiet composure for timidity, interpreting his restrained humility as evidence of vulnerability, as if a lack of overt showmanship indicated a fragility that might crumble under unfamiliar pressure. They did not yet understand that beneath the calm exterior lived a storm of controlled ferocity, sharpened through years of discipline, repetition, and a relentless internal standard demanding perfection in every movement. Inoue did not require noise, nor did he need bravado. His confidence was etched in the way he wrapped his hands, in the deliberate precision of his warm-ups, and in the measured gaze with which he stared through an opponent rather than merely at him. His preparation was ritual, his timing instinctual, and his dominance was a matter of process as much as power. So when the fight was scheduled for Carson, California, the energy surrounding it carried the tension of two worlds colliding. A Japanese champion stepping into American territory for the first time and an American challenger convinced he had discovered the limits of the man nicknamed the Monster. The arena buzzed with a mixture of curiosity, doubt, and cautious anticipation, the kind that lingers before a debut, hovering at the boundary between expectation and disbelief. Was Inoue truly as dangerous as the stories claimed, or would the new environment expose vulnerabilities unseen in his homeland? The lights shone bright and unforgiving, the air thick with anticipation, the scent of sweat and excitement mingling in a charged atmosphere. Fans murmured, analysts speculated, and journalists scribbled notes as the fighters made their walk to the ring. Nieves appeared energized, his expression sharp with determination, while Inoue's face remained a mask of absolute composure, each step measured, each movement deliberate, a silent declaration of control. Nothing in his demeanor betrayed anxiety or uncertainty. If nerves existed, they were private, compartmentalized, and irrelevant to the task at hand. He did not seek to dominate with presence alone, but with performance, precision, timing, and an almost surgical approach to every motion within the ring. The bell rang, and instantly, the atmosphere shifted. Inoue moved forward with a presence that erased any notion of nerves, establishing control immediately with a jab that combined speed with a subtle, menacing malice. Nieves attempted to defend, but every connection, however slight, echoed through the arena, a reminder that timing could be as punishing as brute force. The first round unfolded with a clarity that suggested not a fight but a demonstration. Every step Inoue took was calculated, every punch deliberate. Nieves tried circling and tried creating distance, but Inoue tracked him with the efficiency of someone dismantling a puzzle he had already solved. The body shots began early, hooks thudding into Nieves's midsection, forcing him to brace and wince. Subtle reactions betrayed the gradual erosion of confidence, the incremental breaking down of an opponent who had entered the ring with his own narrative of inevitability. Murmurs moved through the crowd as the realization began to take hold. The stories were not exaggerations, they were warnings. By the second round, the realization deepened. Inoue sharpened his pace, moving into range with seamless steps, delivering combinations that felt less like attacks than demonstrations of calculated violence. Nieves attempted to mount an offense, firing counters in an effort to disrupt rhythm, but every punch invited a faster, harsher reply. Inoue's counters were blades, slicing through openings the instant they appeared. Nieves's expression shifted, a visible reflection of concern emerging where determination had been. The American audience, initially skeptical, found themselves leaning forward, captivated by a level of control that transcended the ordinary. Each punch was an argument, each combination a statement, each feint and step a lesson in dominance. There was no wasted motion, no overextension, no apparent strain, only the relentless imposition of skill upon a fighter who had believed he could shape the story himself. The third round showcased dominance made visible, a careful orchestration of movement and force. Inoue dictated angles, exchanges, and the very rhythm of the fight. His footwork cut off Nieves's escape routes, transforming the ring into a narrowing corridor where every step backward drew him closer to punishment. The Japanese champion was methodical and precise, dismantling his opponent not with reckless fury but with measured pressure, a craftsman of combat applying exactly the right amount of force to fracture confidence without wasting energy. Each punch was designed, each step intentional, each pause deliberate. Nieves continued to attempt offense, but the effectiveness of his counters diminished with every second. He was no longer fighting an opponent in a conventional sense. He was contending with the unyielding architecture of control that Inoue had erected around him, a space that allowed no margin for error. By the fourth round, Nieves's output had diminished further, not due to courage, but because the weight of precision and timing beneath which he labored had begun to sap him. Inoue pressed forward, striking with force, yet maintaining absolute control over distance and pace, dictating every aspect of the engagement. Watching him was like observing a tide rise, steady, unstoppable, indifferent to resistance, carrying all before it. The audience recognized something extraordinary. Here was a fighter who could dictate not only the terms of battle but the very perception of it, bending the environment to his rhythm, crafting a narrative of inevitability in real time. The fifth round delivered the moment that would define the fight, a flash of brutal clarity. Inoue slipped inside, reading Nieves's movement with uncanny precision, and unleashed a left hook to the body that landed with devastating effect on the liver. The sound of the impact sliced through the din of the arena, drawing gasps from the crowd as Nieves collapsed to a knee, his face contorted not by choice, but by the involuntary surrender commanded by such a blow. He struggled to rise, fighting not an opponent but his own body's rebellion, each movement revealing the limits of endurance under precise, overwhelming pressure. Inoue resumed the assault, a conductor of destruction, continuing to dominate with chilling composure. His strikes were sharp but calculated, never reckless, each blow a testament to control and mastery. By the end of the sixth round, Nieves's corner intervened, recognizing the futility of continued resistance and the urgent need to preserve the fighter's well-being. The referee waved it off. The technical knockout marked more than just a victorious American debut. It signaled the emergence of a global force whose skill transcended geography, a champion whose brilliance did not depend on the comfort of familiar surroundings but instead flourished even under foreign scrutiny. In the aftermath, the perception of Inoue shifted instantly. Analysts who had doubted him found themselves revisiting assumptions, rewatching footage with a new lens, and acknowledging the clarity of execution, the discipline, and the cold mastery that defined his performance. Fans approached the narrative with renewed reverence, understanding that what they had witnessed was not merely a contest one, but a demonstration of superiority that extended beyond belts and accolades. Opponents watched with growing unease, recognizing that the monster's reach extended far beyond the borders of his native land. The fight became a defining chapter in his career, a moment in which admiration transformed into awe, potential into fulfillment, and rising stardom into undeniable dominance. The significance of the night extended beyond the immediate outcome. It was a cultural collision as much as a sporting contest, a Japanese champion stepping onto American soil, confronting skepticism and doubt, and emerging with authority so complete it left spectators scrambling to recalibrate their understanding of skill, preparation, and the nature of greatness itself. Inoue's performance was a lesson in precision, a study in composure under pressure, and a demonstration of the psychological and physical synergy required to dominate at the highest level. He did not merely win. He commanded, dictated, and reconstructed the space of the fight, bending expectation to his favor with an artistry few had previously seen. Every punch, every feint, every step conveyed mastery, and the choreography of his dominance was as hypnotic as it was terrifying. Nieves's effort, in contrast, highlighted the scale of Inoue's achievement. Despite courage and preparation, he could not withstand the combination of timing, accuracy, and instinct that characterized the monster's assault. Each attempt to shift momentum, each burst of offense, was met with precision and corrected immediately, leaving no room for error, no space for recovery. What might have been a competitive bout in ordinary circumstances became a stark display of disparity, a visual and visceral reminder of what separates prodigious talent from mastery. Inoue did not rely on intimidation or spectacle. He relied on control, anticipation, and the flawless execution of a plan honed through years of repetition, refinement, and relentless internal scrutiny. By the conclusion of the fight, it was clear that Inoue's American debut had accomplished far more than a simple victory. It had rewritten the perception of a fighter once seen through the lens of potential, recasting him as a global juggernaut whose authority extended beyond geography, culture, and expectation. Observers were forced to reconsider prior assumptions, that success abroad was uncertain, that skill could falter under unfamiliar pressure, and that youth might compromise composure. Inoue had demonstrated all of these concerns to be baseless. The monster's debut had elevated him from a regional marvel to a figure whose dominance commanded attention worldwide, a young champion whose legacy was already beginning to crystallize. In the quiet aftermath, as commentary filled the airwaves and analysts dissected each sequence of movement, the narrative became clear. Inoue had not simply defended a title, or won a fight, or even impressed skeptics. He had delivered a lesson in the nature of excellence itself. In the careful calibration of every punch, the precise measurement of every step, and the unwavering presence that guided his performance, the world witnessed a phenomenon that transcended ordinary understanding. Inoue had arrived not as a visitor, but as a force, one whose presence reshaped the contours of competition, whose authority demanded recognition, and whose mastery would set the standard for a generation of fighters to follow. That night in Carson, the global boxing community saw a demonstration of what happens when preparation, discipline, and innate ability converge perfectly, a moment where a fighter's evolution and the world's scrutiny collided to reveal a singular truth. Greatness is not only measured in titles, but in the clarity, control, and inevitability with which it is expressed. Naoya Inoue's performance was a symphony of dominance, an exhibition of skill that balanced aggression with patience, violence with composure, and power with intelligence. The monster had crossed an ocean not merely to fight, but to communicate a message, that his brilliance was universal, his capability unbounded, and his place at the pinnacle of the sport absolute. Inoue's journey before and during that fight illustrates a rare fusion of factors: prodigious talent nurtured with discipline, ambition tempered by strategic intelligence, and a temperament capable of translating preparation into action under the most exacting circumstances. Each round of the fight functioned as both a statement and a study, a masterclass in timing, positioning, and psychological acumen. Nieves, despite courage and training, became a measure against which the monster's abilities were cast, a foil whose resistance highlighted the subtlety, precision, and overwhelming force of the champion. By the time the bout concluded, what had initially been a contest of fists had become a vivid illustration of mastery in motion, a template for how dominance is articulated not through spectacle alone, but through execution, anticipation, and the unrelenting application of skill. The evening cemented a global understanding. Naoya Inoue's talent was not confined to his home country, nor to a single style of competition, nor to familiar surroundings. It was a force capable of manifesting anywhere, against any opponent, under any conditions. Observers were compelled to recognize that the narrative of an untested foreign champion was no longer relevant. The evidence was irrefutable. Inoue's performance demanded acknowledgement, recalibrating the perception of what a young fighter could achieve on the world stage and raising the bar for everyone who would face him in the years to come. The monster's arrival was definitive, a moment that transformed admiration into reverence, potential into certainty, and national reputation into global recognition. In the hours, days, and weeks that followed, the fight would be dissected, replayed, and discussed endlessly, not merely for the technical brilliance displayed, but for the broader implication that Inoue was not just a champion, but a standard-bearer, a young fighter whose skill and control transcended borders and expectations, a phenomenon whose trajectory had shifted from rising star to a force of unassailable dominance. That night, the boxing world learned what Japan had known for years: a fighter capable of breathtaking precision, relentless pressure, and calculated ferocity had stepped onto foreign soil and, with quiet composure and absolute authority, demonstrated that greatness recognizes no borders. The monster had arrived, and the world had no choice but to take notice.